Today we're going to be taking off the front strut assembly. This is a Toy Tech assembly, as you can see up here. It's got 3 bolts up at the top that come through and 3 nuts we got to take off. And it's got this one large bolt that goes through the bottom of the shock assembly here. The big thing we got to really worry about is getting this bolt out. We don't want it to damage this boot. So I'm going to see, it looks like I'm going to be able to just slide it right out from the angle that it's on currently. But I won't know for sure. You just really want to make sure you don't damage this boot. So let's get to it. Okay, these nuts up here, these are 14 millimeter on the Toy Tech system. They may be different for yours. And this nut down here is a 19 mil nut, so I'm gonna go and get those loosened up and removed. So you see that bolt, it's fairly close to the axle here. It will hit, and it's barely to the edge of the hole over here. So what I'm gonna end up doing is this is a SPC upper control arm and upper ball joint. I'm just going to take out this nut right here, separate the arm, and then just kind of move this towards the back end over here. That should give me enough space to get that bolt out. A little tip for getting these cotter pins out: use some snips like this, angled pliers, and you just kind of lightly grasp onto it, and you just use it to pry it out. So I'm actually leaving my tie rod in installed right here, and it kind of keeps the arm from coming too far out. I did take off this 10 millimeter bolt up here that held this bracket on for the brake line, but I think it gave me enough room to get that bolt out, but we'll see. And what I did after I got this bottom bolt out, you can see the tie rod end is still out, and this was loosened up and it was just kind of hanging over here, but because the tie rod was still in, it didn't kind of come towards me, so it didn't pull the axle out. You really have to be careful about pulling the axle out. But I was able to get that bottom bolt out. But what I did up here is I just left one of the 3 nuts on, so that way once I got this out and everything, it wouldn't just free fall. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this up and take this out. Okay, I got that nut out, and it just easily comes out. Here are the icon shocks that I'm going to be installing. They are marked on the top. You can see it says driver, passenger. Make sure that the nitrogen valve is pointing towards the outside of the vehicle so you can easily access it if you ever need to. And if you look down here, you can see there's a spacer here, bushing, whatever you want to call it. You want the short side pointed towards the front of the vehicle. So since it's the driver's side, it's already oriented correctly. It's going to be sitting up in here basically like this, with the nitrogen valve out here and the short side of the spacer towards the front of the vehicle. You can see this compared to the Toy Tech. I actually ended up getting the 700-pound springs from Icon. The Toy Tech was a 650-pound spring. There are the part numbers if you guys are curious about it. But yeah, pretty excited. Also, these are like a 2.5-inch lift. I also got these, let's see, where's the part number? I got these 1/4-inch spacers, and the way that these spacers work on a lift, it's basically, on a Sequoia, it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So because this is a 1/4 inch, I'm actually going to be seeing about a 1/2 inch lift on the vehicle. So, you know, the spacer just goes up on there, in between there and the actual shock mount up there. There's the part number again. I'm a little bit nervous that the hardware that came with the Icon stuff is not going to be long enough. If it's not, I got to go up to my hardware store and get some more. But we'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully it is. It's going to be a little bit tricky to do with one hand, but I'm going to try and attempt to show you. So it wants us to install a lock washer on the hardware that it came with, right? So this is 1 inch. So that's going to go in the front right there, just like that. And then since I'm adding a 1/4 inch spacer, you can see that there's not very many threads that stick through the spacer to go into the top of the shock. So I went and got some more hardware that is just a 1/4 inch longer than what was supplied. You can see here, the reason I got a 1/4 inch is because I'm adding a 1/4 inch spacer. So it's going to be the exact amount of threads that were designed and sent from the manufacturer will be going into the top of the shock. This is grade 8 right here. And this is a 3/8 bolt with coarse thread, which is a 3/8 by 16. So if you do need to get this online and you are going with the Icon shocks, you might need to get different hardware depending on if you plan to run a spacer. Now, if you look at the actual shock, you know, some people might be concerned on why I'm getting a spacer versus just adjusting the shock itself, because you can see it's threaded all the way down and up. So there is adjustments on the shock itself. That's what I chose to do on my setup. You may have something different that you would want to do on yours, but this is what I wanted, so don't mind me. The reason I wanted that was because I didn't want to take up all of the adjustment that's allowed on the thread adjustments, because there's a maximum limit that you can adjust that. I didn't want all that to be taken up before I put my front bumper on. I still wanted to have some adjustment ability once I put the front bumper on, so I could level out the front of the Sequoia. Also, another thing, if you look at the top, you see these 3 holes right here with the little notch next to it. Those are the holes that you will be using for the Sequoia or Tundra setup here. So you can see, since this is the driver's side, they notched those ones that will be used. Okay, I got these 3 threaded in and started on all 3 ends with the spacer. It's a little bit tricky. I'm not tightening these down all the way. I am just snugging these down a little bit, just so I can get a more secure upper mount when I'm trying to mount the bottom bolt in. So what I ended up having to do is take off the end link to the sway bar right here. And that gave me a lot of downward motion on the actual arm itself. And I was able to slide this bolt in really without much effort. But I do have it supported with the jack just so it doesn't pull the axle out. So I got the bolt in, I'm about to tighten that up. Then I'm going to torque everything back down to what it needs to be and put the end link back on. These top bolts up here, we're going to torque these to 30 foot-pounds. And actually I stripped out the original factory bolt pretty bad with my impact, which is why I have always stuck to hand tools for the most part. It's nice to take off the bolts with the impact, but putting them on, I haven't had such good luck. But anyway, we're going to torque the bottom bolt to 98 foot-pounds. So go ahead and get on that. And for anyone watching that has an SPC, I torqued this nut here to 77 foot-pounds. Okay guys, I finally got the weight of the front bumper. I haven't finished installing it yet. You can see I still need to make some like fillers for some of the gaps in here, but at least all the weight is up there. And I wanted to wait to adjust the front suspension until I had all the weight that's going to be up front on it. So these Icon coilovers do not come with the tool that's needed to adjust it. You can see there's like an Allen key set screw right in there. And then these holes are what's used to raise or lower the actual spring perch right here. And from all the reviews online, the tool that Icon sells, it's really a kind of a chintzy tool. It bends. A lot of people have it bend on them. One person said that using a 3/8 steel rod works, so I went ahead and bought this. I'll have an affiliate link for this in the description below, but it just fits right in here. And then you can use this as kind of like a handle to loosen or tighten it up. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to that and try and level out the Sequoia. Okay guys, I'm gonna use this to kind of point, but the instructions say do not extend this spring perch lower than 2 3/8 inches away from the bottom of this black Icon. So there cannot be more than 2 3/8 inch of thread between the top of this and the spring perch right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start cranking it down and see what we can get it to. So you definitely want to take your wheel off. You can see here the threads are just under 1 inch. So I'm going to take that up to 1 3/4 inches. First thing you want to do is unscrew this little Allen set screw, and you're going to use these to crank it open. So I have been using this 3/8 steel rod. You can see it's bent, but that's because the other side I was trying to do it with the wheel on the ground. So I was putting a lot of force on it, but once I took the wheel off and started doing it this way, it's much easier. So definitely take the wheel off. You can see it's currently at 1.5 inches. Got to get it up to 1 3/4 inches. Okay, so definitely take off the tire when you're doing this and jack it up, so that way the lower control arm can move down as you crank the spring perch. You can see it's a lot more level now. The front threaded gap on the coilover, it was just under 1 inch when I started. I cranked it up to 1 3/4 inches, and the distance between the measurement between the center of the hub and the bottom of the fender, it was 22.5 and now it's 24. So you got to remember, what you adjust on the spring perch, spacer, whatever you might want to do, it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So if you do 1/2 inch on the spring, you're going to get about 1 inch at the wheel. It's the same concept as like opening a door. The way the handle is on the outside, if you pull it open, you got to move a lot farther. Whereas if you have the handle in the middle of the door, you move smaller distances, but the door travels the same amount. Same concept with here, the 2-to-1 ratio. So just keep that in mind. So now the front distance between the center of the hub and the fender is 24 inches, and the rear is 25 inches. And that's with the bumpers on, that's with the straight Joe rear suspension, Dobinson suspension and stuff from First Gen Off-Road. And the front is a Icon coilover system with the 700-pound springs. That was the Icon 700-pound spring front suspension install. It is a lot more expensive than some of the other options. Like I said in previous videos, I've decided to keep this vehicle for the long haul, and I wanted to go ahead and get quality parts that can be rebuilt, because the Toy Tech suspension that I had, the shocks were getting to the end of their life and they are not rebuildable, and they don't sell replacement shocks for that according to directly from Toy Tech. So I wanted to get something that I could continue to use in the years to come. This install might be a little bit different than what you guys might expect from a stock setup. I did not do the Toy Tech installation. I had a shop do it when I first bought the vehicle. So I don't know what the differences might be between a factory front suspension setup and the Toy Tech setup, but it'll probably be fairly similar. You kind of get the gist of what's going on here. So hope this helped you guys out. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comment section below. Like always, guys, hope you're having a great day. Thanks for watching, and keep on enjoying life out there.